a lot of Heat news to talk about on this edition of the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Nic Rohloff. Well, if we just take it back to last Friday, Miami made a very unexpected trade, sending Haywood Highsmith to the Brooklyn Nets. They got them underneath the luxury tax and also opened up another roster spot. So it was evident that Miami was going to sign another player to the roster. There was speculation on Dru Smith, on a big man. Well, it ended up being Dru Smith, and today's show titled Great and Bad News. Well, one, because I am happy that Dru Smith is back. We'll talk more about that. But there is also a negative aspect of signing Dru Smith that we'll talk about as well. But the information on Dru Smith signing a standard small 3-year contract. I don't want anyone to look into it too deeply on the details of his contract. But when you give out these smaller deals, they usually are 3 years. And he did have a really good 14-game stretch last season for Miami, which is why I was intrigued with bringing him back prior to the season-ending injury. Hopefully, he'll be able to bounce back and be a pivotal piece for this Heat team off of the bench. But make sure you do subscribe to the channel because we have daily coverage of the Heat, whether it is breaking news, signings, roster moves, rumors, workouts. We got you covered. Hit that sub button. Let's get to 24,400 subscribers on today's show. And if you were subscribed to the channel, you would have known that it was very likely Miami was going to attempt to bring Dru Smith back. It was reported all offseason long that the goal was to have him back on this roster at some point. But the issue that we faced is because of the CBA, we have already signed him to 3 different two-way contracts throughout 3 different CBA periods, which means, well, they couldn't have brought him back on a 2-way deal. It had to be a standard contract. So they ultimately found their way by getting rid of Haywood Highsmith, not having to go deeper into the luxury tax, and freeing up a roster spot. And I am torn on bringing Dru Smith back to this Heat roster because, as I mentioned just a second ago, he was terrific in the 14 games he played for Miami last season. Is he going to be a guy that goes crazy offensively, averages 15 a night? No, he's not. But he plays a role off of the bench. And last year, at least on the offensive end, his role was a solid off-ball guard that could knock down some threes and maybe even grab and track down some offensive rebounds. Well, he shot 53% from beyond the arc last season in those 14 games, a straight-up phenomenal number to where, yeah, it wasn't difficult shots, and they were very stationed three-point shots off the catch, but when he caught it and let it go, like I remember doing watch party, be like, oh, that's probably going in. That is how consistent he was shooting the ball in those 14 games. Small sample size, but nonetheless, pretty impressive. But we all know when referring to Dru Smith, the number one thing that is the up and arrow is his defense. And in these 14 games last season, he was terrific. He ranked in the 100th percentile in deflections, 100th percentile in adjusted defensive turnovers forced. He actually ranked in the 88th percentile in rim defense for a guard. Very impressive. And all of these advanced metrics coming from Crafted NBA. The Crafted NBA defensive plus minus had him ranked in the 84th percentile. I keep on want to hone in here and hammer home this fact. It is a very small sample size, yes, but he was in an elite company last season defensively playing in those 14 games. He was very good. And going into last season, I was very upset. I was pissed at the Heat having him on a 2-way deal because I thought it was taking away from other opportunities for younger guys on a 2-way contract, a.k.a. Isaiah Stevens. But with how well he played, I, all off season long, realized that, okay, this is a potential valuable piece in this Heat organization, this Heat backcourt, into this bench to where I would bring him back. Now, would I have done it the way Miami did it? Probably not. But in a vacuum, it is a good thing to have Dru Smith on this roster. And before we talk more about this, are you excited that Dru Smith is back for the Miami Heat? If you are, type Y for yes. If you are pissed, type N for no. Let me know what's your thoughts. Pin comment. Like I said, I am kind of happy he's back. But I am also torn because it has other implications for the Heat's ability to build their roster and potentially make other moves. Well, let's start with what happened. They got Dru Smith back by trading Haywood Highsmith and a second round pick. And there was a couple people in my mentions on social media that clearly did not understand what went down. And were calling me a clown, honestly, which made me laugh because I always laugh when people try to throw shade. It is what it is. Listen, you could have your fun. But the person was upset with me saying that Pat Riley made a terrible trade because I said the Heat traded a second round pick to get rid of Haywood Highsmith and got nothing in return other than salary relief. But then they point out, well, you got a second round pick back. It is protected from pick 31 to 55. That means the Brooklyn Nets would have to be a top 5 team in the NBA this upcoming season for that pick to convey. Got news for you, folks. The Brooklyn Nets ain't going to be a top 5 team in 2026. So you salary dumped Highsmith, which, by the way, I think, and I can't guarantee it, but I feel pretty confident that if Miami held on to Highsmith and traded him at the deadline, they would have gotten multiple second-round picks in return due to the cheap contract that he has, the expiring contract that he has, and his ability in production at the wing 3-and-D level. It's just poor management of assets. Now, it does get you under the luxury tax, and after the signing of Dru Smith, you are at $1.7 million underneath the tax. But to me, the Highsmith trade was a joke. I have talked about how stupid it would be to stretch and waive Simone Fontecchio. I would have rather done that to get underneath the luxury tax and sign Dru Smith than trade Haywood Highsmith the way you did. It just doesn't make any sense. But with the roster being where it is right now, this is where things stand. Same starting lineup. You just replace Haywood Highsmith on the bench with Dru Smith. Another reason why it's a little conflicting, when you look at this current Heat roster construction, they just have so many guards now. Is there a need for Hero Powell, Davion Mitchell, Dru Smith, Kasparas Jakučionis? That's 5 guards. They're not all going to play on a nightly basis. Hell, 2 of them might not play on a nightly basis. And when you look at what the Heat have on their bench, they have no big man. Absolutely none. I'm not kidding when I say this. If you are starting Bam and Ware, yeah, you will stagger those 2 throughout the game to have one of them play center, one of them on the bench. Sometimes they'll play together. But your backup center is Kashad Johnson. He is more of a backup center for Miami than Nikola Jovic. So how are you going to go into the season with no true third backup center? Like that's an issue. We still need another big man. And that's where I get to the bad news with today's show. Miami can't sign another player without crossing the luxury tax. They're $1.7 million away from crossing it. They could technically sign a vet min like Alec Burks, which is a usual $2.3 million contract, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the CBA to incentivize signing veterans lowers the cap hit to 1.9. But even that would put you into the luxury tax. So you can't make another signing to add to the roster with a standard deal, even though you have a standard contract spot open, 14 of 15, without crossing the tax. Now, you could do it at some point before 2026. Anthony Chiang on the matter, saying that with the Heat just about $1.7 million below the tax, Miami would need to wait until around early December to sign a 15th player to a prorated standard minimum deal that would keep it out of tax territory unless a move is made to change the salary cap math. So once again, I will go back to the Haywood Highsmith trade. It is terrible asset management. And the Heat not getting any picks back, not creating enough space to be able to sign Dru Smith and a big man is just short-sighted way of doing business. It's the Heat not valuing second-round picks, which they are valued across the league. You see so many good, productive players be traded for 2-3 second-round picks. Miami could never be involved in those trades because they don't have any second-round picks to their name to actually deal. This Heat front office is so outdated with the way they think. It is very, very frustrating. But you can see, though, Miami will likely not make another move in terms of signing a standard contract guy unless they make a trade or they wait until December, which is very frustrating. Rounding out the show here in a second, but with the Heat season getting closer and closer, get your Heat gear right now at chatsports.com/MIA hoodie sale, where you could find this sweet hoodie, $15 off. Sizes are running out. I've seen on the sheet of my analytics a lot of clicks. 700 people clicked on this link in our description and comments to try to buy this hoodie. Don't miss out. Don't waste your opportunity to grab yours right now. All right, the final topic on this edition of the show is the what is coming next, what the Heat elected to do. Because I saw tweets that came out over the last 48 hours that from, I think it's the Herald, reported that the Heat chose to go with Dru Smith over Kai Jones and Trey Lyles. Now, that's obviously common knowledge because they signed Dru Smith over any other free agent. But I am curious to see that Trey Lyles was the veteran that potentially would have been the siding for Miami in the front court. Obviously, Kai Jones worked out for us, so there's going to be the link between those two. It won't, and I do want to quickly say this. Me saying that the Heat won't make another move isn't me saying that they're done this offseason, because the Heat do have 4 roster spots open. When you look at what the Heat have, they have 14 standard contracts, they have 2 two-way deals, and then they have 1 Exhibit 10 contract that was given out to Ethan Thompson last week. The NBA allows you to carry 21 players on your preseason roster. So with the 2 two-ways, the Exhibit 10, and the 14 standard deals, you have 4 roster spots open. So I do expect between now and September 30th, which is when the Heat training camp opens, so you got about, 42, 44 days from now. Quick math, probably off, close enough. To add a 2-way contract as well as 3 Exhibit 10 deals. So we'll keep you updated on what Miami ultimately does there. But I do have to imagine that it is a big man in some capacity. I just have a hard time coming to the realization or fathoming, if that's a word. I think it is. Fathom's a word, but fathoming, I don't know if it is. Oh, Coop says it is. I'm not a wordsmith, so sometimes I just throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks, like that one, so good for me. But how do you not add another big man to this roster? We're like an injury away from Vlad Golden being our backup center. That's an issue. I mean, it seriously is. Like, I know you can't bank on injury, but it just goes to the point that I'm trying to make of the depth on this Heat roster being so poor at the front court spot. Not ideal. If you want more coverage on the Heat, make sure you follow me over on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribed as well. But we break down every move in depth on social media as well as here on YouTube. @Nic_Rohloff's the handle. Go follow me today.